Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to tutorial number 3, my approach to improvisation. I'll continue doing these sessions as long as people find they're valuable, and it kind of gives me an opportunity to pause and reflect on what I do, and maybe gives me some more mindful ideas for the future as well. So, I was thinking about what kinds of things would help folks who want and are excited to get into spontaneous improvisation. And there was just someone today who reached out to me who's a classically trained organist like myself. And that's very exciting to hear. In the future, I may send out some of my links out to the AGO and some of the other worship departments of the different denominations and so forth, or online churches, because I'm very interested in streaming live for performances, especially for worship services, meditation, and prayer groups and so forth. So if any of you do know of folks who are looking for artists that they want to use music, my music is royalty free. At this point, I may create some albums in the future, but right now I just love playing and connecting with an audience of like-minded souls. So today, I was going to talk a little bit about kind of deciding as I get into chord progressions. I'm going to add a little bit more depth. I talked about 2 chord progressions in my tutorial 1 and 2. But today I'm just sitting and I'm going to come up with the chord progression that I want to use. And so I'm going to play around and see what I like. So this is something I would suggest for those of you who really want to get into improv but have been kind of chained to just sheet music and so forth. This concept of just putting the music away, sitting down and becoming intimate with your keyboards, being able to play and just see what happens is something I would really encourage you guys to do if you're interested in this kind of improv. So today I'm kind of in a minor mood. I love minor keys. And so I'm going to start with the key of A minor. Now, so that's going to be my tonic, the primary key signature. Now I could go up to, I could do something like this. So I'm going up from A minor to the relative major, C major, to the D major chord, back down to A minor. So you'll notice there's just 3 chords, A minor, C major, and D major. And that can get you a pretty rich palette of combinations, especially if you're working with inversions. So in other words, instead of playing the C chord, you could actually play the C chord with the bass being a C. Or you could make it a moving, like you could move the bass note up to a E or a G. And even same thing with the A minor chord. So this is a very different feel than this. And the other thing about when you're trying to play around and build a complex musical experience, so many times I find that arpeggiation or being able to, do moving notes in the context of the key you're in makes a huge difference. It gives a lot of life into the music. So I just playing this. Very different. And in many cases, I might start simple, but then the next time I come around, I figure like, well, now I can play notes that are within that scale. So now, the other thing is when you start playing, you'll find that as you do this more often, it's like the spirit wants to move you in a direction. And so I will experiment sometimes. I'm sitting there playing this progression that I like. But now I think, wow, what about if I do, instead of this, I go to the minor fifth. Down to an F major, to an E major chord. So just think about what I did there. I went from A minor, now I'm changing it right here. And I don't, that doesn't work as well. This is like a great transition. So I'm transitioning down to an F major chord. Now I could take that anywhere too, but for me, because I've played enough just playing around, I realize that the next chord I want is a D minor. So here's a, okay. And now I'm going to go back to an A minor, but I'm going to, I put the bass note up on the E of the A minor chord, so it's kind of suspended there. Back to D minor. And then E major, seventh. And I purposely don't get into calling out the chords in detail. That analysis, when I'm sitting there saying, what is this chord, slows me down. And so when I'm playing, I'm not recalling, oh, this is an E minor sustained 7, whatever it might be, because it's too much thinking time. When I play, it is basically the muscle memory I have built from just doing. I've been playing now improvisation for many years, but especially the last 3 since I've had this studio. I've done nothing but improvisation. And I found that over that course of a couple years, gosh, it has given me an ability to subconsciously just go into music and feel where it should go. So if I could recommend it, again, I'm going to stress a couple things. First of all, finger dexterity. The more you can work on scales, I used to do that all the time. I'd go up two octaves. And I would just keep doing that, and over time it strengthens your fingers. The other thing for some folks, maybe organists and others, is that it is difficult when you're playing, especially if you're trying to be always moving on the keyboard and keeping a very dynamic presence, that every one of your fingers, the more independent they are from the other fingers, the better. So I remember a musician about 20 years ago recommending that I sit down and I take a triad, a C, E, and G, for example, and then I hold the three. You can't see that there we go. I hold the three notes down, and then I just work my second and fourth fingers. And I do it until my fingers get exhausted. This is a process that will take time, but basically I'd be sitting there many times just doing this at home. I haven't done it for a while, so it takes time, but you're working the independence of these fingers. Once you've got the second and fourth that you've worked, then use on the right hand, use the first, second, and fourth, and practice the pinky and the middle finger going back and forth. And then the other part of that is doing the second finger, fourth, and fifth, and doing the thumb and the middle finger. And as you can work through this, try to discipline yourself to focus on making sure that each note you play, there's the same timing. So you're not like doing something. You're going to find that that's easier to do when one finger is stronger than the other. So I used to do that like 15, 20 minutes a day. And then I would do scales. And those things really, they did multiple things. Number one, they gave me the dexterity I needed for runs and so forth. Now, I haven't gone into all the different scales like the blues scales. I know what they are in certain keys, but the major and minor scales, I know those pretty well, and obviously there's variations on a wide variety of minor scales. But I just want to have enough understanding so that I can build a complement of tools that I can embed in my subconscious so that I can just play. All right? So when I sit down and I pick an A minor chord, let's try a couple other progressions here. Now, instead of going to the C, remember that was one progression, but now we can go from A minor to E minor, which is the relative fifth minor. So there's another progression right there. I go and gosh, from there but you could also do this. Let's see. Let me think. I'm not sure what the next chord is here. So, okay, I like this one. And I don't want to do the D major, which is this. I'm an E minor. There we go. So, what about this? A minor, E minor. There's a B, a major chord. But you could also make a B minor. But I actually like the B major chord better. again, as you listen to this, if you're in the flow of the improvisation, it just flows. Because for me, I'm sitting there listening to this. Now, if I want to change it up again, I can go from a B major chord, play the 7th of that B major chord, and then transition into a C major. See that? So I was originally here. There we go. Now, I'm in the same key here, but I'm going to do the... See that? I'm going to just change the bass note to an A minor. To the D major. So when I'm actually doing the movement in my upper hand, I'm going between the E minor to the B flat major. And when you're transitioning between chords, you can use kind of some of the transitional notes. We'll get into that a little bit, but you'll hear that there's kind of grace notes that are kind of moving me between the different chords. So, okay, that's one thing. Now, the other thing I find when I'm actually playing is I love arpeggiation. And all these instruments have incredible arpeggiation. So one of the techniques that I use is that I have one keyboard set to a beautiful string sounds or a very good pad. This is a beautiful pad. I just love this pad. And I'm going to put the fundamental bass on the other keyboard here. Now, if you have one keyboard, you can split the keyboard, of course, and build a scene or a combination or whatever definition is in your particular workstation, but you can build a split keyboard to different sounds. But because I'm a classical pipe organist, I have been so used to having multiple manuals and a priori knowing where I'm going to go next, I set that manual up, and then I've got the flexibility to play those without having to completely change stops all the time. Sometimes I played on 4 manual organs. The most I've ever is 5, but usually 3 to 4, sometimes 2. But with the pedal board, that gives you a lot of flexibility. Well, that's what I was kind of trying to recreate with the multiple synths. I wanted 2 things. First of all, I wanted the diversity in sound generation technology. So that adds to the ensemble richness when you put multiple sound sources together that are generating the sound a different way. As an electrical engineer in my past, I always loved studying sine waves and frequencies and all that other stuff. And when you get a very slow-moving beat frequency, that's what you hear in a pad in many cases on a synthesizer. So here's a Emberg Glance, just a beautiful. Now, what you'll find is, the other thing I would suggest is as you get good at knowing the different chords that you like fitting together in a particular progression that you have. You can create so many different styles of music. So, for example, this is a really beautiful, quiet, peaceful, and I'm going to put the bass up here. I didn't finish my statement before. I create kind of a very string sound bass here. So typically there are many times when I will just hold a bass note on one, and I will use my sustain pedal so I don't have to keep my hand on that note. So I have much more ability to switch. And it also provides me the fundamental note below which I'm playing my improv. Now, what I've just done here is I've constructed on the I've set the Prologue here, this Korg analog, to a kind of a very frothy bell texture. Icicles is what it's called, and I also have arpeggiation on here. So now I'm gonna again, we were doing. So, right, we remember this. So I'm going to do a little bit of an extension of what we've talked about here. So. So that kind of gives you an idea. So there's ways to get the arpeggiation to sustain. The way that I'm talking now, I just put this into a sustain mode. That is, once I play the chord, it just continues on with the arpeggiation forever until I shut it off. But the other option on the Prologue and in many keyboards is that you can set it up for arpeggiation, but it will only continue as I hold my foot on the sustain pedal. That is very useful in the fact that sometimes if I'm doing multiple things with my hands and I don't want it to conflict with a prior arpeggiation harmony, I can shut that off. I can just switch around, and so it kind of has a little discontinuity in the arpeggiation, but I can fudge it so it doesn't sound like it's just broken up. Okay, I think I got somebody at my door, so I'm gonna hang it up now, and we'll continue on with tutorial 4 soon. Thanks, guys.